Michelle.
Hello, my friend. It's so good to be here.
I am so glad that we could have a reunited and it feels so good kind of moment. Thank you so much for saying yes when I asked you to come back. And you were one of my very first guests when I first jumped into entrepreneurial land and my very first summit. And I didn't know what I was doing. And maybe we don't actually ever really know what we're doing. We're all just winging it and chasing what feels good. And so, asking you to come on the podcast definitely felt good. And I'm so glad that you're here.
I'm happy to be here. I mean, how do you say no to you and the sparkly classes and all the, I mean, women?
I just got the inspiration from your backdrop. I was like, how can I match that purple glitter? And I know that for those of you who are watching, like now her lighting, but when we first got on, when we were in like before it got started, I was pretty much in with an angel. It was amazing. And she's like, what's going on with the light? I'm like, you can't help your light, baby. Lean into it, lean in. And here you are. And speaking of that, that kind of makes me, it's in like vibe adjacent, which is your total universe, right? So, I think that some people like they can detect like a vibe like before they can admit whether they need like a nap or a boundary or like I don't know, full blown identity revolution. And so when I asked Michelle, what do you want your word to be? She was like vibe. And that made total sense. So, but I think a lot of high achieving women became wildly skilled at reading everybody else's while like quietly losing contact with their own. And so oh, but this is the feral era for women over 40, where women come to stop origami folding themselves into smaller versions of who they are just to keep everyone else comfortable. And today's guest is Michelle Peacock, founder of My Vibe, who somehow took 20 years of billion-dollar supply chain strategy and turned it into conversations about human design, nervous systems, and emotional alignment, which honestly, kind of feels exactly like the kind of feral math we should be doing at this age, at this time. So I am so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. Us corporate survivors, we gotta stick together and share the good word.
Mm, 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 mm. So, like, tell me a little bit about, when we're looking at, the vibe itself, like, why vibe? Why does this conversation hit differently for women over 40 specifically?
It's interesting. I never like planned on becoming like a vibe queen, but there was times when I was
If the crown fits.
I know if your crown fits, exactly. Like sometimes you like start using words before you actually know it's your thing because your
Mhm.
knows it's your thing, right? And so when I meet people, I left a very toxic corporate America. A lot of gossip, a lot of nepotism, just a lot of like heaviness, heavy vibes, right? And I didn't have words
Yeah.
for it. And so when I left and everybody wanted like to know that spill the tea and all the things, I was like, I don't want to be in that negative vibe. It's too negative. I don't want to be in that vibe anymore. Gossip, talking about people behind their back, like no, thank you. And so as I really started like my solopreneur, my entrepreneur journey, there were moments where I was like, you know what? They're just not my vibe.
Mhm.
To say they are not my vibe.
Yep.
Whether I am at a very high vibe and they're low, I don't even need to call that out. It's pretty obvious, right?
Yeah.
When you look at vibrations like joy and enlightenment, those are the higher purple vibrations. Like my soul has been calling purple since I was a little girl. But the low vibes of anger and greed, and those are the red, oranges, and yellows. So it's like when you get into this zone of vibration and you start understanding that all emotions have a vibe, right?
Mhm.
So then there's just this time when you're like, you know what? They're just not my vibe. Because the more you start lowering yourself to their vibe, it's not good for you. So why would you do
Mhm.
that? And so I really just started saying, like, you know what? I'm not gonna lower myself or my standards anymore. I'm just gonna say they're not my vibe. Then
Mhm.
I have to go negative because I like to say in this world, assholes have friends too.
Yeah. Well, and then it doesn't become a right wrong,
No.
it's just different categories, different buckets, and there's no judgment there, and it doesn't detract from the power of your vibe. One of the things that I like to say is, like when people are having conflict in their like personal relationships, it's like, you know what, the one with the stronger vibe wins. So if you're determined to have this be the most amazing, magical, and they're just being a grumpopotamus, like you will win if you are committed to that. So, what is that going to be? And we definitely don't want to surround ourselves with people where we feel that pull for being the heaviest, by being this like like Pollyanna kind of, like, yes, it can, cautiously optimistic. Everything can work out if we just, like we want to surround ourselves with people who believe in the better view, who believe in the better cause, who believe in the better world. And, you know, and when I think of all of those words, supply chain never comes to freaking mind. So like how like you went from a $1 billion supply chain
Yep.
to human design, conscious
Yep.
commerce, which on paper sounds like a very, very, very wild left turn.
Yep.
But I have a feeling your brain sees them as like deeply connected. So
Yeah.
what thread ties
Yep.
those working together for you, those worlds?
Well, it's interesting because life goes through cycles, right? And I
Mhm,
really, without getting too much in the human design world of it, before 40, you're just figuring stuff out. You just
mhm,
are, right? And so you need a day job. You need to learn what's for you, what's not for you, what you're good at, skills, what you don't like. That's like the whole like 30s to 40s is like figuring life out, right?
mhm.
And for most of us, that's our day job, right? And we also during that time might be leaving childhood behind and starting a family. So there's a lot of commotion
Yep.
in that zone, right? And so for me, I think the supply chain was how I paid the bills. The supply chain was where I learned my skills, right? I built $1 billion pricing algorithms and Six Sigma continuous improvement. And I found that I really love helping people be the best version of themselves, right? And
Mhm.
really, I can pull that out of people. I can see organizational structure very clearly, know who is in the right seat on the bus. So, kind of like
Yep.
human chess a bit. And so I got really good at the things I was good at. And then I realized I just didn't like the politics piece of it, right? It was
Mm.
like, oh, so we can't just do the right thing. Because they're related to so and so, and they're, oh, okay, I forgot about the dark side of all the politics, right? And
Right.
so I got really good at that piece. And then when I left corporate, I was like, I want to do what I'm good at. So to kind of to take a step back, when you go into that, like we started on a low vibe there, but like vibes are really about your authentic joy. What do you
Mm.
do that lights you up inside? And so when I left corporate, it was one of those, what parts of it did I like? I like the stuff that I just described. I like problem solving. I like seeing what
Mhm.
others immediately laying out a plan and a problem and fixing margin and pricing. But then I'm like, and then I empower people to go and do it. Right.
Yeah.
So I did start my company out on the framework of I'm going to do B2B consulting in supply chain, which I've done for many clients. But like I get a little bored with that because I come
Mm.
in, I fix problems in 6 months that take most companies a year to even figure out where the bleed is. So I'm like, I just want to come in, fix your problem and leave. So then I kind of pivoted a bit and was like, well, my communities that I'm in and all these women executives I'm working with, I was hosting events and I was really doing things I like outside of my day job. And I kind of created a second path, which my first book is about called Your Joy Job. And I was like, I do still do the supply chain consulting, but like it just doesn't light me up inside like it
Mhm.
used to. I'm in it with people that I do. But I really learned about human design through some of my women's groups. And that was when I was like, wait a minute, time out. The world, like there literally is a life manual and nobody bothered to tell you like what the actual beep, like I don't know if we can swear, like what the hell, like this is awful. Like so I learned human design and then I was like, oh my gosh, I was not really following my life path in corporate. My role is
Mm.
to pull together with the resources they need. And as I really dug into my life purpose and my superpowers and my core four, right, my
Mhm.
in earth like real deep strengths, I started lighting up inside, wrote a book, and was like, okay, well, I'm still doing the consulting thing, but wow, I actually have this whole life path that I'm kind of supposed to be following. And the
Mhm.
reason that that's important is as you're following your joy and you're figuring out what that looks like, nothing you did in your day job was a waste. It's just now
Correct.
you repurpose it.
Oh, I got it.
How do you
Yeah.
package that because your 30s and 40s you're just figuring stuff out, and then you hit the 40s and you get to this like middle
Mm.
chrysalis zone, and they call it the midlife crisis. It's an awakening, y'all. It's
Mm.
when you cross from the south node to the north node, which is called, for lack of a better word, the Uranus opposition. Like who cares what it's called, it's your midlife awakening.
Mm.
That's when we start to question all this stuff. And between 40, that Uranus opposition, and your Chiron, which is 50, that's when you figure shit out. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, now I'm leaning into my superpowers. But your day job is what got you there. It's what taught
Mhm.
you vibe. What do you like? What do you don't like? What don't you like? Right?
Right.
So it's all
It's at that upper quadrant of the Eisenhower matrix, the stuff that you like and the stuff you're good at. And, and I think sometimes people feel kind of muted or dead or, invisible in their lives. But the more you lean into that quadrant, the more that you lean into that purpose,
yeah,
it becomes so much easier for us to just surround ourselves with people who see that, who celebrate that, who encourage and multiply that. And it's such a powerful gift, but it can be scary, right? Because our brains want us to just like they are not joy machines. Our brains are like repetition machines and predictability machines. And so when you start switching shit up, your brain is going to be like, no, 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 no. Like, what are you doing? And like,
yeah,
even if it's joy, even if it's great, even if it's
yeah,
amazing, your brain's going to be like, can we just like take a little pause here? Okay. And,
yeah,
and knowing that we can have those conversations with our brain and be like, "You know what? I got this," and I know that feels strange, but let me help you gather some safe evidence so that you can see that I'm not putting us in danger and I'm not running into the lion den with a big old T-bone steak around my neck. And so just trying to figure that out. Talk to me about like earlier you said the 4 core.
hmm
I'm not familiar with this. Can you connect some dots for me?
yeah, for sure. So basically, in human design, it's your sun and earth gate on your personality and your unconscious side. So if you
Mm,
really, yes, I teach in your joy job. If you can like just pick one focus on, it's like the sun and earth gifts, conscious and unconscious, and then your life purpose. If you spend 70% of your energy there, you can't fuck up your life path.
mm,
And
mm.
so it sounds too
Here, that
simple.
one gets well, this one gets this. Hold on, let me see here.
Yeah. But it's like there's these moments when you can look at that and say, oh, that is my gift. Because there's 64 different gifts out there in the world, and we all have a unique combination of four of those, right? That's why we're all so uniquely built to do whatever the hell we're on this earth to do. And we all do it in a different vibe. So when I teach the human design piece, I'm like, yeah, yeah, these are your gifts. But then there's all these like layers to it. That's your vibe. It makes you different. It's your type, it's your aura, it's your layers, it's all the beauty. And I think that's what lit me up inside about human design is the
Mm,
complexity was so simple because the complexity is really about every single person when you combine all of these different traits is the most unique version that is uniquely qualified to do their life purpose.
mhm,
Like, man, I wish somebody told me that earlier.
mhm. But to that degree, like somebody told me that earlier, to your point, like anything that we did earlier was not a waste. Like it is all compounding for the greater good.
100%.
And my degree is in teaching, and yet I haven't been in the classroom, in any year that starts with a 2. And and yet like I see it as such a core foundation to how I show up, how I'm curious, how I connect with people. And like the work that you do, it's one of the things that I admire most about you, because you were one of the first people that I connected with when I jumped, away from the freedom of being an employee and not
Yep.
quite being sure what this whole thing was gonna look like and if it was actually gonna work. And,
Yep.
but the way that you pursue contribution and you pursue connection over everything else and just have this, like, amazing, loving, bright light of, like, everything will work out, and then you just attract that and you model that for all these people who are still kind of maybe letting fear guide their ships, drive their buses. And I'm just, this isn't one of the questions that I sent you ahead of time, but I'm curious about how all of that, like your ability to do that, I'm assuming ties into these 4 and your human design and all of that. Like, and
Yeah.
I admit, like you and I have had numerous conversations about human design, and I'm still like, I don't quite get it. So for those people who have never, like, they just don't get it, like, how would you summarize what human design even is beyond
Yeah.
what you were saying about how the 64 gifts and stuff?
Totally. So, human design is the science of differentiation. It is the deepest level of self awareness, and it's based on your birth date. So you can't fake it. There's no quiz to take. There's no assessment to pretend you know how you're feeling that day. And it's interesting because as
Mm.
I have done all the assessments in corporate, I've done all the big ones and used them with my teams. When I
Yeah.
learned design, I was like, this is the side of me on the personality and my gifts. But there's this unconscious level that's baked in of how others see you and where you're triggered and the shadows, and nothing else out there could do that. And I love that
Hmm.
you say that people don't quite get some of this, because I actually, one of my gifts, I have the Einstein gene. I can take very complex things and make them simple. And so I was working with students on human design, and I was doing the things and like, you're a manifestor, you're a this. And they just kind of like, I saw the connections weren't quite there. The synapses, it was just wasn't, they
Yeah.
weren't getting it. And I finally just released and I said, you know what, Sarah, you're a Doberman pinscher. How does that resonate? And she was like, oh my God, I totally am. And then we started talking about it. And so what I did is over the last few months, I actually took my $1 billion algorithm of how I built human design to teach you
Hmm.
through it, and I retranscribed everything in my algorithm to map it to dog traits.
Mm.
And it was so beautifully mapped out because, again, building algorithms is my background for 20 years. So that's what I did with human
Right.
design. And so I built what's called, it launched just this week, and it's called My Dog Vibes. And you can download your chart free on my website. And it literally is, what pack are you in? What dog are you? Right? If you're a golden retriever, a pit bull, or, bulldog, or these like Pharaoh type of dogs, or Carolina
Hmm.
Shih Tzu, it says so much about you, because if we could only love ourselves as much as we love our dogs for
Mm.
all of their quirks and tail wags, and some dogs are so ugly, they're cute, so are humans.
Right.
And so I took that lens and said, what if we looked at ourselves through the lens of our dog? And I didn't make it up. I mapped all
Yeah.
of the traits exactly
Yeah.
to the, so that when you download it, it's now making sense for people, because they're like, oh yeah, I mean, yes, I'm a 5'1" projector, but like I'm a poodle. And I'm like, my is it, she's kind of like a little wiry but intelligent, but she can be annoying, but she's got a lot of energy. And so when you look at it through that lens, all of a sudden people started being like, wait, I get it now. Even
Yeah.
though the same words, it was like the language wasn't quite connecting to an analogy that people could understand.
Yeah.
Because there's
Well, and I just think that's so fun because like even anybody watching right now sees like my little thing going across like for my free quiz. Like I did the exact same thing. Like I felt like we love our dogs so much, but it's easier for us to kind of understand how we're working. Like I'm a pit bull, and so it's basically just like I'm super loyal. I like, being in pajamas, like and it can come across as fierce, but really I'm just like a crusty marshmallow on the inside. So it'd be interesting to take yours and see
yeah,
like what breed it says. I'll have to go and do that
yeah.
next. So
Like that's the thing. It's like it's just connecting it to analogies that make sense,
yeah.
right? And so
Mhm.
you can absolutely have, you can be a poodle with a bulldog nervous system.
Yes. Yes.
But there's a layer of there of like, that's why humans are complex, right?
Mhm.
Is complex. But when you start layering in the human, I'm a this with a that and a that, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is why we're all so unique and
Yeah.
beautifully designed to fill our life purpose. So
Yeah.
our job is our skills, and yes, it pays the bills. Our joy job is the stuff that we start to really
Yeah.
tap into. And then all of a sudden I'm like, guys, just by the way, like abundance is out there. And if your life purpose is something that you're supposed to do, why don't you just try to make money doing it? We often just take the things that we love and give them away for free. And my challenge in your joy job was like, or why don't you say, oh, actually, that's what I'm supposed to be doing in this life, and I need money to continue the path.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I'm going to be trapped in the day job world of skills and bills and insurance and all that jazz. And it's just too low of a vibe for most of what our souls are calling. I do
Yeah.
think some people's day job is their life purpose. Good for them, right? But the rest of us in kind of that middle land are like, there's got to be something more. And I think
Mm.
that we have it all. I don't think everybody's meant to be a solo or an entrepreneur, truly. And that's why it's like, tap into this in a way that feels safe, in a way that you
Mhm.
start slowly making money. If I said to somebody, you could make an extra $20,000 a year on your joy job, right? They'd be like, well, wait a minute, how? I'm like, well, just as you start building and figuring out and finding your people, you'll figure that out, right?
Mhm.
And that's And when you say how did I go from supply chain to human design, I was like, honestly, it was not intentional. It was me just trusting that the right next step was the right next step,
Yeah.
right? And truly, you said I kind of have that Pollyanna vibe, and it is in my chart. But I bring people together with the resources they need. That is literally my sun and earth. My 37, my 40 is about community and like bringing people together. And so I think that human design is one of the resources everybody needs. It's the manual of your life. Like somebody just forgot to give you the decoder ring, right?
Yeah.
If I can give people that resource that can help anybody, then I am fulfilling my life's purpose. So it was kind of this no brainer as I learned human design. And I was like, everybody needs this. And then my high performing friends were like, great, well, what do I do to learn it? And I was like, oh no, you're never going to go study like thousands of hours like I did to learn about me. I need to make this a dog vibe. I got to make this a quick win.
Right.
Other people have that information overwhelm, and they're like, if you can tell me everything about myself, then I don't want to know anything. Versus, oh, you can tell me about this, or you can tell me about that, or
Mhm.
dog vibes is just such a very basic level,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just that like connection. I love how we both thought of that and like came out like this just first does that because it's so beautiful. Yes, just make it simple for people to understand. There's
Mm,
no competition, there's abundance for all, but you have to know how you tick. What is your authentic vibe?
mhm.
And that's what we spent so much time giving away, right?
And that's part of what the joy of aging is, that need for the external approval. The ability to trust your internal alignment gets so much easier the older that we get, where it is so much easier to just say yes to ourselves and trust ourselves. That just is a part of growing old that we can celebrate.
Well, and it's interesting. It is part of growing old, but I think it's actually just coincidence of what cycle we're in. Because
Mhm,
when you hit that 40 to 50, your unconscious side of your chart just starts awakening, and you're like, wait, I'm really good at a lot of other things. Like there's just, it's almost like the second half of your life is starting to bloom, and you're like,
mhm.
oh my gosh, why didn't I see this before? And that's
Right,
the moment where you say, because you weren't ready to see it yet.
right.
So you have the lived experience and the wisdom and the wounding and all the light things. Until
Yes.
that 38 to 44, you aren't ready for that
Yep,
moment. So
yep.
you can never miss what's meant for you because what's meant for you is going to arrive right on time. Now, I do think some of us sit in the suck a little too long because we pick paths that are not aligned for us and we knew it. Right. When I teach people with the sacral decision making and they have to trust their gut feeling, every time I look back at a decision with them, they're like, I knew I shouldn't have done that. I'm like, yeah, you did, but you still did it. You people pleased, you pushed through. And I call that you took the long path. It's
Mhm,
okay. You sat in the stock a little longer than you needed. If you had said no to that and stood your ground and had that like intuition that your gut said no, and all that means in that moment is you need to know how to set authentic boundaries.
mm,
And that's the thing that corporate doesn't let you do very, very well.
mm.
Truly, it's not safe to set boundaries in corporate. And
Right.
I think where we struggle a bit, right? That's where we give away some of our power to feel safe, but it's also an environment that doesn't make you feel safe. So you just have to kind of take that for what it is. And that's why I'm like, don't let that create your life. Build that joy job
Mhm.
so that you know this isn't healthy, but you still have to pay bills, and then go over here where you can really start to tap into your authentic joy, and that maybe will help you set boundaries, or maybe it just makes you care a little bit less about the stuff you don't like. You're like, yeah, whatever, I'm just doing that to pay the bills.
Yeah.
That's my friend's job, like whatever. And I think we just need to normalize that a little bit more in a world where a robot could replace you or AI is threatening jobs. I mean, there's just these levels of self-empowerment of if we can take back our power, we don't have to care as much that our whole identity was in our day job. And
Mm,
that was really how I got from supply chain to what I do now is like, I actually think it's both. I think we just need to normalize that my corporate job wasn't all of who I was.
mm.
I think people need to separate that a little more. And whether they're being forced to separate it, I mean, going through the transition process is never easy, but it is another layer of lesson that you need to learn how to be true to yourself, true to your
Yes,
authenticity.
yes. Because when our nervous system kind of side eyes our life, like it is not our job to ignore her, like that. That's just not so. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on and having this conversation and spending part of your day with us. And I'm so grateful. And I invite everyone to come back next week for another episode. Fast, fun, ferociously, wonderful conversation. And then look for the in the show notes, and you'll be able to see all the different ways that you can connect with Michelle. She's got a gazillion 595 million connections on LinkedIn, and that is just like a small drop in the bucket compared to what you're doing out there in the world. So we're grateful to be part of your universe, and thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, lady. You're always amazing.
Yay, go team!